Hello, and thank you for watching this session 1 of our training. In session 1, we will learn how to access the main page of the software, and I'll go through some menu items with you. We'll talk about our learning and support pages. We'll learn how to enter our company information, branding our software. I'll run through the configuration area and some basic settings for you. And then we'll talk about the creation of master files. Of course, master files are needed in order to move forward with the software. When you log into your software, this is the page you will land on. It's the main page of the software, and here I would like to point out how to access our support center. By clicking on this link, under the lady with the microphone, you will be able to access our support center. It will open up another tab on your browser, and you can access any learning document right here that will help you engage, use, and benefit from your software. By clicking on any listed document, you will find both a video with instructions or a Word document with screenshots. So however you prefer to learn, it's there for you. Back to the home, clicking home will take you right back to the main page of the software. At this time, I'd like to point out a very important article, the Getting Started Guide. This will walk you through all the steps required to set up your database and brand the software, so it is a very important document to review. Make use of your support center. It will help you set up your database and use it to its fullest potential. Let's head back to the software and start exploring. Moving around in Tailwind is usually pretty straightforward, with the navigation menu on the left of each page being the quickest way to access all the main modules. It's split into 3 sections: operations, administration, and tools, with each containing a number of different modules. Each section can be expanded to show its contents, and clicking on the name of the module will take you to that part of Tailwind. By default, the navigation menu is always visible on the left of the screen to allow you to quickly move around the application. However, this also means that it is always taking up valuable real estate in your browser, which leaves less room to display lots of list columns or other data. By clicking on this icon right next to the Tailwind logo at the top, you can unpin the navigation. This will cause it to shrink to a skinnier version of itself that then expands every time you hover over it. You can return the original navigation menu by expanding it and simply clicking on this icon again to pin it back in place. Let's talk about searching our database. We all know we have to look for historical data. At the top of the page, you're going to see a global search bar. Clicking the bar will bring up a search prompt, which will allow you to search your entire database: quotes, orders, customers, vendors. The global search will quickly return results from each Tailwind module separately, allowing you to more quickly locate the records you're looking for. Let's try an order number. I punch in my order number 118, and the first thing to pop up me is the actual order, 118. If there are any dispatches that are numbered 118, they will appear, even the dispatch that's carrying the order 118. If there are any quotes or customers, let's try that with ABC. If we use a customer name, for example, and say go, it's going to go to work for us, find us any orders that are related to ABC Company, any dispatches, quotes, or customers. So that is a global search bar across the top of the software. You can access a number of profile and configuration options by clicking on the gear icon next to your account name at the top right hand of the page. Settings contain a number of settings that are specific to your personal account, while configuration contains a number of system-wide configuration options. Depending on your level of security, you may not have access to configuration, so don't be worried if you can't see it. And shortly, I'm going to show you more in the configuration area. When using Tailwind, you will probably find yourself moving quickly between a number of different connected records and modules, whether it's jumping from an order to the dispatch screen or even a dispatch record, checking a customer record for details before modifying a quote. Sometimes it can get tricky to find your way back to the beginning of the trail, which is why we have provided an additional navigation option in the form of a history breadcrumb. This breadcrumb will always show you the 6 most recent pages you have visited, making it easier to jump between related records, or get back on track if you end up somewhere you'd rather not be. Because Tailwind is designed for the web, we make an effort to keep things simple, 1 page at a time. But sometimes trucking is just not a 1 page at a time sort of job. It's more like a dozen things and the phone ringing with a few more on the way. At times like these, when you need to have a bunch of different things on the go and may not be able to finish each one before starting the next, we recommend relying on the tabbed browsing capabilities of your web browser, which will allow you to open multiple Tailwind windows simultaneously. The exact details will depend on your browser, but in most cases, you can right mouse click on links to open in a new tab or open a new window. Let's have a look at that. So here, if I have my orders displayed for example, and I want to open an individual order but leave my order screen here, I can right mouse the open button and open this order in a new tab. Software will go to work for me. Open the individual order details on another tab. Back to the order list. I still have that order information sitting there in this tab. So now I can go, maybe I want to see my dispatches in a different tab. All I have to do is right mouse the dispatch, open it up, and it will now be my dispatch list. And again, opening individual orders or dispatches in another tab. So you can have as many records open here as you need to. Easily switching back and forth, just like moving between different windows of any application. You can open as many tabs or windows of Tailwind as you want, which can be useful when you want to compare things side by side or keep multiple tasks on the go. Tailwind has a lot going on under the hood. Most of the time, that's not something you need to worry about, but sometimes a little tuning of the engine can go a long way to smoothing out your ride. A lot of the logic underlying how Tailwind works is based on our best understanding of the industry, but every company operates a little differently. To reflect that, Tailwind allows for a great deal of configuration and customization so that you can ensure that it works the same way you do, whether it's changing how invoices are labeled, creating custom fields in your records, controlling how carrier insurance rules are enforced, or adding new revenue and expense items. All of this fine-tuning happens in the configuration menu. To access the configuration menu, navigate to the gear icon located in that top right-hand corner of the page, click on Configuration, and the various headings will appear across the screen for you. Each of these headings has several subsections, which contain the actual configuration options. The General Information section contains information for your main company and any branches you have set up. And yes, the software will allow you to have multiple branches which can be useful to track revenue and expenses separately. Editing a branch using our yellow Edit button will display all the basic details of your company. This one is not completed, so at setup time, you will complete all of your branch details, and that information is located in the Getting Started guide. Let's look at a branch record that I've already completed. So I've populated in the address, my city, my phone number, my carrier code, my SCAC, my DOT number. All of that information can be contained here. These details will flow through to a variety of reports and documents created in Tailwind. For example, setting an invoice prefix. We'll instruct the system to prefix your invoice numbers. A hypothetical ABC company might prefer to see ABC at the beginning of their invoices for branding purposes. Ensuring you have your logo installed in the software and your address details will allow the software to display this on invoices and load confirmations. This section also contains a tab for your insurance information. Now, for more details on setting up your company information in particular, please make sure you read our Getting Started guide. The Reminders section will let you configure Tailwind to remind specific personnel when different certifications are set to expire, inspections need to be done, or documents need to be renewed. This is a section that will help your compliance issues. In this drop-down, will be a list of all personnel that you have entered, and the selected personnel will receive an alert at the specified lead time. Reminders can help you ensure that you remain compliant with the ICC, DOT, and NSC. Note that there is also a separate tab for equipment reminders. Lookup tables. This section of the configuration lets you modify some of the many lists that Tailwind uses to populate its drop-down fields throughout the application. For example, the commodity type section contains a list of possible commodities you might haul, allowing you to quickly select from a list rather than typing in the commodity manually every time you create a new order or shipment. Adding new items to these tables, or removing ones you will never use, can make for a more efficient process down the line. When you're ready to add in your commodities, you will simply put the commodity description here. If I move building supplies, for example, I will populate it here and add it in. That saves me from typing building supplies in the commodity field on every order or shipment I create. Similarly, user-defined or custom fields allow you to add new fields to a particular record. For example, perhaps you track an item on a customer record or an order record that we have overlooked or is individual to your company. Adding this item as a custom field under the Customers tab or the Order tab, whatever it relates to, will allow you to conveniently track the data in question. Once you have labeled the field, you will also have the option of making it required or configure a drop-down for you. Remember that each record has its own tab, allowing you to have up to 4 custom fields on every record. Equipment. Tailwind's default list of equipment types is extensive, and this section allows you to remove or add types to the tree as needed. For example, if you are a carrier that only moves freight on flat decks, you can go ahead and delete all other equipment types, which will reduce the size of the drop-down list when selecting equipment types. Or if there is an equipment type we have not thought of, you can create it here and it will then be available for choosing on an order or dispatch. Example, Conestogas. You can add them in and it will then be available in your pull down. Or empty container. Whatever is the needs for your type of transportation company. The Operations section contains configuration options relating to operations modules in Tailwind. These encompass a wide range of default behaviors, including rules enforcements for things like carrier and owner-operator insurance requirements and default settings for your shipments and ability to set default settings on customers, orders, shipments, and dispatches. Financial. Again, general information or general settings contains a number of defaults relating to financial settings, including the length of your default carrier and customer pay terms. Accounts is where you can configure your various financial accounts. For example, if you have a U.S. bank Visa or a ComCheck account that you pay carriers from, you can set up the account here by adding an account which will then allow you to set payments from those accounts. The yellow icon button will allow you to edit any of these accounts. It is here that you will set up any bank accounts or credit card accounts that you use to pay your vendors or deposit money into as payments received. Tax types will mostly be used by our Canadian clients. We all know there is no tax on freight in the US. However, there is tax on freight in Canada, and the software has the ability to enforce Canadian tax rules. As a Canadian carrier or freight broker, you will set up the various HST, GST, and QST rates here. Fuel surcharges. While you always have the ability to set percentage fuel surcharge rates on individual orders, you can use the fuel surcharge rates configuration settings here to create FSC schedules. Once you create an FSC schedule, you can then fetch the latest rates directly from the EIA or add a custom rate. These are useful for when you have a customer that uses a specific FSC schedule. Once it is created here, you then have the ability to set a specific schedule as a default on a customer record. Once set as a default on the customer record, any orders created for that customer will use the FSC schedule set on the customer record. Payable settings will allow you to set a variety of options relating to the payment and dating of bills. The revenue and expense items section allow you to create specific revenue and expense items for use throughout the system. We're going to cover this off in depth in session 2 of our training. It's simply the ability for you to categorize your revenue and expenses. Document fields lets you customize certain parts of the documents that Tailwind produces on your behalf, including quotes, bills of lading, invoices, and load confirmations. All of the reports that you can customize are listed here. For example, the bottom of a quote report and the bottom of a load confirmation include a spot for terms and conditions. You can modify the corresponding document fields to include your own specific terms. We recommend you quickly scan through all the available fields to ensure that their defaults match up with your company's own terms and expectations, noting that terms are terms and verbiage that will print on related reports. Advertisements are taglines that you can simply make your very own. For an in-depth description of the different document fields, check out our article on customizing your documents. Integrations. These settings control the integration of Tailwind with external websites and software. Load boards allow you to give Tailwind access to any load boards you use so that you can easily advertise loads from within the application. And you can learn more about integrations here in the Support Center under our Tools and Integration section. That covers off the basics of the configuration area, and once you get used to the software, you may find that you will come back in here and change settings, which is great as it allows the software to more closely mirror your operations. The one item to ensure you are completing at setup time is your company information, as this will allow the software to populate your address info and logo on various reports like invoices and load confirmations. The last item on this curriculum for today's session is master records. Creating master records are required in order to move forward with the software. We consider master files to be personnel, locations, customers, vendors, and for asset-based trucking companies, equipment. Of course, our freight brokerage companies will not need to create any equipment records. We can import these records for you, or you can create them individually yourself. I'm going to run through each master file with you now and remind you that there is a learning doc for each one with specifics on how to set up each different master record. Here in the Learning Center, populating your database contains creating customer records, vendors, personnel, locations, and equipment. And of course, we've got some articles about importing and exporting your data. Let's start with personnel. Personnel records represent all the employees of your company, whether they be dispatchers, sales reps, or truck drivers. Keeping your personnel files up to date will help you manage payroll, pass off quotes to dispatchers, track driver miles, assign sales opportunities, and just generally keep track of who is doing what. Here at the top of every list will be a Create button. Let's note that business roles allow you some choices, and choosing a personnel as a driver, let's have a look at that. Let's open up, let's create a record. So when you go ahead and create a record, you have business roles down here. So if this person is an account rep, you can simply switch the toggle on that they are an account rep or a dispatcher. What I would like you to note is that when you signify that this personnel is a driver, you now get a new window that populates here, allowing you to track all those compliance issues that you must track on your drivers. I'm going to open a driver record here. So Georgia Green is a driver in my database where I can keep track of her licenses and travel docs, the expiry dates of same, all of her compliance issues as well, and I can also add in auto payables. Automatic payables is a way for the software to create these bills for you. So for example, if you incentivize your sales staff, dispatchers, by paying a commission, you can set the auto payable up and apply it on the personnel record, and the software can automatically create the payments to that person. We also cover off automatic payables in session 2 of our training. So feel free, go ahead, get your personnel record set up, making sure you access the document so that you're covering off all details for yourself. Location records represent any location that you might want to reference throughout Tailwind. pickup and delivery locations, a customer's warehouse, cross-docking and storage facilities, etc. Many of these locations will be created automatically by Tailwind as part of other tasks, but sometimes a location will be missing and you will want to create it yourself. Well, these additional location records can be created when you're first setting up your database using the Create button at the top of the list and detailing the location information. Location records can also be created on the fly when you're creating orders or shipments. Customers are an essential part of any business. Keeping your customer records up to date in Tailwind will make the running of your business, from operations to invoicing, a lot easier. Let's have a look at how we'll create a customer record. Let's do one together. Using the Create button at the top of the list, we'll populate a blank form for you that you can now start populating. So I'm going to make a customer record for, how about Imperial Glass Company. Now you can track two different names for this company. You can track an internal name and a legal name. So maybe I just want to say Imperial Glass in the internal name. Keep it short for myself. Well, the legal name is what's going to print on the invoice to your customer. So that should contain the legal name of your customer. You can track their website. We'll talk about the email in just a moment. You can set individual account reps or sales reps to individual customer records. So here in this pull down is a list of all personnel that you've created in your database. You can associate a customer to be associated to a specific branch in your database if you want. Setting the currency, we are a multi-currency software, so setting the customer's preferred currency will allow the software to handle currency issues. How the customer wants to receive their invoice. If you simply print and stuff the invoice into an envelope and mail it off, use print, of course. However, many customers these days are allowing us to email our invoices to them. So when you choose email, ensure that this email address is the email address that actually receives the invoices. So this might be imperialglass.com, billing at imperialglass.com. Whatever email address receives the invoices is what you will want to populate there. The type of proof of delivery this customer requires, any default fuel surcharge types or schedules. If the customer requires a PO or reference number on their invoice in order to receive that invoice from you, switch this toggle on and the software will keep you safe. It will remind users that this customer requires a reference number on their invoices. Choosing the type or categorizing your customers can be invaluable for analysis purposes. Probably 95% of your customers are simply going to be set to merchants. However, if you are a Canadian client of ours, the software will recognize that brokers and carriers are tax-exempt customers. You can even detail the minimum cargo and liability insurances that your customer requires, or set specific brokers to each customer in question if needed. Now, of course, we detail the addresses wherever it is that this customer resides. Putting in the details is going to populate the map. It will look at the zip code and the address and populate on the map where you will see this customer. Now, this is the primary address. Typically, we send our invoices to the primary address. However, if the customer actually has a different physical billing address, switch this toggle off and you will be able to put in a separate address for that customer. Customer credit. Every customer requires some credit details to be set. So here you will set the customer as approved, or maybe they're a cash customer to you. The approval date that you are approving the credit, the number of days that you're willing to accept exposure for this invoice. So if your terms are 21 days, populate it there. If they're 30 days, go ahead. Whatever your terms are, those terms are going to print on your invoices to your customer. Then, of course, the high credit that you are willing to accept for this customer and any checks that you do. So I have a signed credit agreement from this customer and I check some trade references. I will switch those toggles on to signify to myself what checks I did on this customer. I have now populated all the details and all I have to do is hit the Create button, which will create the customer record and populate it on the screen for me, allowing me to add notes, contacts. We always want to keep track of our contacts, so maybe I happen to deal with Cheryl there, and she's on the order desk. Any individual emails can be tracked here, phone numbers. When you create it, it will populate it there. You can add as many contacts as you need to a customer, as well as having contacts. They also have the ability to have user portal names and passwords associated to these contacts. That's useful if you're making use of our customer portals and carrier portals. So that is successfully creating a customer record that you can now build orders for. From a customer record, you have the ability to print account statements. From a customer record that you've done a lot of work with, I'd like to point out our rate histories. So as your historical data builds, it's all about accessing that data. So on every customer record, you're going to see a rate history here. And when you click it, the software will go to work for you and find every load you've ever moved for this customer, showing the rate you charged, where it moved from and to, and the date you did the move. So this becomes really valuable to you when your customers are calling, asking for historical information that you might have done on any loads you've moved for them. Okay, moving on into our master files. We're looking at vendors now. A vendor is anyone who provides your company with a service, whether it be an external carrier, customs broker, or insurance provider. Keeping your vendor records up to date will allow you to assign specific work to specific vendors and ensure that they are paid for that work in a timely fashion. And for asset-based trucking companies, an owner-operator will require a vendor record. As with personnel records, you can assign automatic payables to an owner-operator record, such as revenue splitting. Making sure you categorize your vendors will allow for better utilization of vendor records. Let's have a look at that. So here's just a vendor record I created for my company, a company that works for me called Hub Insurance Services. Here, let's edit this record so I can show you. Here I have the ability to categorize this vendor with any of these categories. So of course I've chosen insurance vendor here. Let's have a look at a couple of other vendor records that will help us. So let's go ahead and look at an outside carrier. Here's 123 Transport. If I edit this, I can see that I've categorized them as a U.S. authorized carrier, and when I do, I now have some details that I can track on them. I can give them a rating. I can show that their contract is on file. I can track docket numbers, WCB numbers, SCAT codes, bond numbers. I can show whether they're hazmat certified. I can also detail, when it's a carrier, we know we have to have a certificate of insurance from the carrier, so I can actually detail that information coming directly off their insurance certificate. Let's have a look at an owner-operator record. So Joe's Trucking is an owner-operator in my database. When I open his record, I can see that he's set up as an owner-operator, and let's edit this for a moment so I can show you that. I can tell that he's using my insurance. I've switched the toggle on to use the insurance directly from my branch record. Owner-operators will require 3 records in your database: a vendor record, a personnel record for whoever drives that owner-operator's truck for compliance purposes, and an equipment record. We're going to look at equipment shortly. You also have the ability, let me go back to that record here for a minute. You also have the ability to do automatic payables on your owner-operators. And again, we're going to cover off automatic payables in session 2. Making sure you categorize your vendors is going to allow for better utilization of vendor records. So go ahead, get some vendor records started for yourself. Let's talk about equipment. Keeping track of your tractors and trailers, boosters and dollies, where they are, who's driving them, when they need maintenance, etc., is key to running a successful trucking company. Tailwind provides a number of tools to help you do so, and they all center around creating and maintaining your equipment records. Let's open up an equipment record and see what we're looking at here. So an equipment record, of course, allows you to track license plates, when it went into service for you, VIN or VIN numbers, that's what they are, just VIN numbers, registration, CVSE decals, those compliance issues. You can attach fuel cards to equipment records. You can keep track of weights and measurements, any permits that might be kept on individual tractors or trailers. You can also track the purchase price of your equipment if you want to. As well, you will have the ability to have services listed on each piece of equipment, again, helping your compliance details. Great, that's going through an equipment record, and don't forget, you will create equipment records for your tractors, trailers, boosters, dollies. Oh, and also know that you can associate a piece of equipment to be owned by company, that's for the company assets, owner-operators, or a vendor in the case of trailing equipment. Very often we're finding asset-based trucking companies are renting their trailing equipment these days. So this allows them to create a record of that piece of equipment that they or an owner-operator doesn't own. You can associate it through to the rental company that you have actually rented it from. Great, that takes us through an equipment record and finishes off our master files and covers off all the curriculum in this session 1. Session 2 is going to cover off the operations side of the software. Thanks so much for watching. Bye for now.